The soil on my boots has always been a badge of honor. It tells you where I've been, what I've built, and what I'm trying to protect. My future son-in-law, Sandro, didn't have dirt on his boots. He wore loafers that cost more than my first truck, and he had a habit of staring at the horizon not to admire the sunset, but to calculate the acreage. He kept asking about the boundary lines of my vineyard in the Shenandoah Valley. It started subtle, just casual curiosity, but it grew into a fixation. My daughter's partner kept asking about our ranch property, and I thought nothing of it. During the wedding, as she stood at the altar, about to say, "I do," she handed me a note from her bouquet that said, "Dad, help me." I stood up and, well, we will get to that moment. But before the chaos, there was just a father's quiet intuition. You know, they say intuition is just experience whispering to you. If you've ever felt that small voice warning you about someone, go ahead and hit that like button, because you know exactly what I'm talking about. And while you are at it, share this story with someone who needs to keep their eyes open. I'd love to know where you folks are tuning in from, so drop your city or state in the comments. And if you want to be part of a community that values truth over appearances, please subscribe to the channel. Sandro would stand on the back porch, swirling a glass of my best vintage, asking where the vines ended and the state forest began. He wasn't looking at the grapes. He was looking at the potential. It's a strange feeling when you realize someone is measuring your life for a coffin while you're still breathing. It makes you question how much of your kindness is actually just blindness. Cynthia, my only daughter, was blinded by a different kind of light. She saw Sandro as a savior, a man who swept her off her feet after a string of bad luck and lonely nights. She dismissed his questions about the land as him taking an interest in her heritage. "He loves the vineyard, Dad," she'd say, her eyes bright with a hope I didn't have the heart to extinguish. "He just wants to understand the legacy." But I had spent 40 years working this earth. I knew the difference between a farmer appreciating the soil and a developer assessing the zoning. Sandro didn't care about the pH balance of the dirt or the rainfall patterns. He cared about road access and subdivision rights. I met him in early spring. He was 34, sharp, worked in asset management in DC, and had a smile that felt practiced in a mirror. He knew exactly when to laugh at my jokes and when to look somber about my late wife, Martha. It was a performance. I've seen foxes look at hen houses with less hunger than Sandro looked at my estate. It reminded me that evil doesn't always come with a scowl. Sometimes it comes with a firm handshake and a bottle of expensive scotch. By the time summer rolled around, the engagement was official. Cynthia was floating on air, planning a September wedding right here among the vines. It was what Martha would have wanted. Martha and I had bought this place when it was just an overgrown patch of weeds and a dilapidated farmhouse. We poured our sweat into it, and now, with the Virginia wine country booming, it was sitting on a gold mine. I never told Cynthia the true value of the land. To her, we were just comfortable. She knew I had a good pension from my days as a structural surveyor. But she didn't know about the investments I'd made in the 90s that had quietly compounded into a fortune. I kept that hidden, not out of deceit, but out of protection. Money changes people. It acts like a magnifying glass for character flaws. Sandro, however, seemed to have a nose for it. During the engagement party, while everyone was toasting to love, he cornered me near the cellar. "Wesley," he said, dropping the formalities, "have you ever thought about the easement on the North Ridge? If you cleared that timber, you could legally split the deed." I looked at him, swirling my drink. "Why would I want to split the deed, Sandro? This farm is one piece, Always has been. He shrugged, adjusting his silk tie, just thinking about asset protection, diversification. For Cynthia's future. If something happened to you, the inheritance taxes on a single parcel this size could be a burden for her. There it was. The burden narrative. He was planting the seed that my legacy was actually a liability, one that he was graciously willing to manage. It's a common tactic among manipulators. Convince the victim they are drowning so you can charge them for the life raft. I played the part of the stubborn old man. I think the land is fine just the way it is, I grunted. He smiled that tight, patient smile you give a child who doesn't understand calculus. But his eyes were cold. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study looking at the old survey maps, realizing that my daughter was about to marry a man who viewed her inheritance as his portfolio. The next morning, I called Harlan. He's been my lawyer since we were both young men trying to figure out the world. I need a background check, I told him. Deep dive. Not just the criminal record. I need to know who he's dated, who he's worked with, and who he owes money to. Harlan sighed on the other end. Wesley, is this about the partner? Cynthia's going to be crushed if you're digging up dirt on him. Better crushed now than destroyed later, I said. It's a hard thing acting against the wishes of the people you love to save them. It's a lonely job, being the sentinel at the gate. We don't do it for the thanks, because often there aren't any. We do it because it's necessary. If you understand the heavy weight of protecting your family, even when they don't understand it themselves, please consider subscribing. It helps to know I'm not the only one who takes that duty seriously. I waited 3 agonizing days for the results. In that time, Sandro brought over a contractor buddy of his to look at the barn, talking about renovation potential for a wedding venue business. He was already measuring the drapes before he'd even moved in. Harlan called me to his office on a rainy Tuesday. He didn't offer me coffee. He just slid a thick manila envelope across his mahogany desk. He's clean on the surface, Wesley. No arrests. Credit score is decent. But my investigator, Veronica, found the patterns. I opened the file. Sandro had been engaged twice before. Both women were from wealthy families in the Midwest. Both engagements ended abruptly, and in both cases, the women suffered significant financial losses shortly after the breakups, investments that went south, joint ventures that vanished. But the kicker was a civil suit that had been settled out of court and sealed. A woman named Beatrice had accused him of fraud, claiming he manipulated her into signing over power of attorney during a bout of illness. He had drained her accounts before she recovered. He settles, Harlan said grimly. He pushes until they break, takes what he can, and moves on before the law can catch up. He's a predator, Wesley. And he's good at it. I drove home with the file on the passenger seat, feeling a mix of nausea and rage. Cynthia was planning flower arrangements, deciding between lilies and roses, while this man was planning how to strip her of her birthright. The realization hit me that predators like Sandro don't just want money. They want dominance. They enjoy the game of tricking honest people. It's a violation of the social contract that holds us all together. Trust is the currency of a good society, and men like him counterfeit it. When I got back to the vineyard, Sandro was there, helping Cynthia address envelopes. He looked up, smiling, the picture of a devoted partner. Hey, Wesley. We were just talking about the honeymoon. Thinking about Italy. I forced a smile. Italy sounds expensive. Oh, we'll make it work, he said, winking at Cynthia. Investments are paying off. I knew he assumed I was land rich and cash poor. That's the assumption most city folks make about farmers. They see an old truck and faded jeans and assume the bank account is empty. He didn't know about the patents I held for structural stability sensors used in skyscrapers across Asia. That money was sitting in a blind trust, untouched. He was banking on the land. He thought if he could get control of the vineyard, he could subdivide it, sell it to developers for millions, and leave Cynthia with nothing but a broken heart and a condo in the suburbs. I decided to test him. A few days later, I mentioned casually that the grape harvest had been poor and I was struggling with property taxes. I might have to take out a second mortgage, I lied. Sandro's eyes lit up like a predator sensing blood in the water. Wesley, he stammered, correcting himself. You shouldn't take on debt at your age. There are other ways to restructure your assets. Like what? I asked, leaning on my shovel. Well, he stepped closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. If you put the deed in a trust now, with Cynthia as the beneficiary and, say, a trusted advisor as the trustee to manage it, you could avoid all that liability. I could set it up for you, pro bono, as a favor to the family. A trusted advisor, him. He wanted legal control of the land before the wedding even happened. He was trying to rush the timeline because I looked frail in his eyes. I'll think about it, I grunted. I've always handled my own books. Times are changing, Wesley, he said, his voice dropping to a patronizing soothe. You don't want to leave a mess for Cynthia to clean up, do you? That was his leverage. My love for her. He was weaponizing my protective instinct against me. It was cruel and it was effective. I needed more than just past patterns. I needed him to incriminate himself regarding this specific situation. I needed him to say it out loud so Cynthia couldn't deny it. If I just showed her the file Harlan gave me, Sandro would spin it. He'd say Beatrice was a crazy ex, that the settlements were misunderstandings. He was a master manipulator. He'd turn my daughter against me. I called Veronica, the private investigator. I need ears in his car and his apartment, I said. He's getting comfortable. He's going to slip up. Veronica was professional and swift. She managed to get a listening device into his luxury sedan while it was being valeted at a restaurant, and another in his apartment while he was at a tasting with Cynthia. For a week, we heard nothing but mundane conversations and terrible pop music. I was starting to worry that he was too careful. But then, 10 days before the wedding, his friend Blake flew in from Chicago. Blake was supposedly the best man, a guy he'd known since college. Veronica sent me the audio file on a Wednesday night. I sat in my office, headphones on, staring at the dark rows of grapevines outside my window. The recording started with the sound of car doors slamming. Then Sandro's voice. The old man is softer than I thought. He's practically begging for help with the taxes. Blake laughed. So the land is free and clear? 200 acres, prime valley soil, Sandro replied. Conservatively, 8 million. If we get the zoning changed to residential, 15, easy. My grip tightened on the armrest of my chair. And the girl? Blake asked. Does she suspect anything? Cynthia? Sandro scoffed. She's clueless. She thinks I'm Prince Charming. Once the ring is on and the deed is in the trust, I'll start the competency hearings for the old man. Say he's slipping. Dementia. Get full power of attorney. That's cold, man, Blake chuckled. It's business, Sandro said. I give it 6 months post-wedding. We sell the parcels, cash out, and I file for divorce. She gets half of nothing because the trust structure protects the trustee, not the beneficiary, if you read the fine print. I paused the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. He wasn't just planning to steal my money, he was planning to declare me incompetent, lock me away in a home, and leave my daughter destitute. The weight of that knowledge is hard to describe. It sits in your chest like a stone. I looked at the photo of Cynthia on my desk, taken when she was 5, smiling with missing front teeth. I had promised Martha I would keep her safe, and now I was letting her walk toward a cliff. I wanted to grab my shotgun. I wanted to drive over to his hotel and end it the old-fashioned way. But that would land me in jail and leave Cynthia alone. I had to be smarter. I had to be the architect, not the demolition crew. I needed Cynthia to hear this, but I couldn't just play the tape for her in the living room. She might not believe it was him, or she might think I doctored it. Denial is a powerful drug. She needed to see the mask slip in real time. I called an emergency meeting with Harlan and Veronica. "We have the smoking gun," I said. "But we need a venue for the execution." "The wedding," Veronica suggested. "He'll be confident, arrogant. He thinks he's already won." "That's cruel to Cynthia," Harlan argued. "Humiliating her in front of everyone?" "It's the only way to make sure she never goes back to him," I said, my voice trembling. "If we do this quietly, he might talk his way back in. If we do it in front of God and everyone, the shame will insulate her. It will force the truth to stick." We hatched a plan. We would have the sheriff, an old fishing buddy of mine named Mitchell, waiting in the wings. We would let the ceremony start. The week leading up to the wedding was a blur of nausea and acting. I played the doting father. I shook Sandro's hand. I slapped Blake on the back. I felt like I needed to scrub my skin with steel wool every time I touched them. Cynthia was stressed, but she sensed something was off with me. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked 2 days before the ceremony. "You seem distant." "Just missing your mom," I lied. She loved weddings. It hurts to lie to your children, even when it's to save them. It creates a fracture in the soul. But sometimes you have to break a bone to reset it properly. The night before the wedding, there was a rehearsal dinner. Sandro gave a toast, talking about family, loyalty, and the future. He looked me right in the eye when he said, "Loyalty." It took every ounce of discipline I had not to throw my wine glass at his head. Later that night, I saw Cynthia walking toward the guest cottage where Sandro was staying. She looked troubled. I almost stopped her, almost told her everything right there. But I hesitated. I thought, let her have one last night of innocence. I didn't know then that innocence was already gone. The morning of the wedding was crisp and golden. The vines were heavy with fruit. The air smelled of sweet grapes and damp earth. Guests began arriving, filling the white folding chairs set up on the great lawn. I put on my tuxedo. I looked in the mirror and saw an old man, tired but resolved. I slipped the digital recorder into my inner pocket. I walked Cynthia down the aisle. She was trembling. Not the happy shakes of a bride, but a deep, vibrating tremor. She wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't look at the guests. She stared straight ahead at Sandro, who was standing at the altar with that practiced, perfect smile. We reached the altar. The music faded. The officiant began the opening remarks. I went to take my seat in the front row, but Cynthia didn't let go of my arm. She held it tight, her grip like a vice. Then she turned to me. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed with red. During her wedding ceremony, my daughter handed me a note from her bouquet. "Dad." She didn't just hand it to me. She pressed it into my palm desperately. I looked down. Scrawled on a scrap of hotel stationery were 2 words. "Help me." I looked at her, shocked. She whispered, barely audible, "I heard him. Last night. I heard him laughing about it. She had gone to the cottage. She had heard the same things I had heard on the tape. And she was terrified. My blood ran cold, then hot. I didn't need to wait for the vows. I didn't need to wait for the speak now or forever hold your peace moment. I squeezed her hand and stepped forward, placing myself between her and Sandro. The crowd went silent. "What's this, Wesley?" Sandro asked, his smile faltering slightly. "A last-minute blessing?" "No," I said, my voice carrying over the silent vineyard. "An eviction." I turned to the crowd. "There will be no wedding today." Gasps rippled through the audience. Sandro stepped forward, his face darkening. "Wesley, sit down. You're making a scene. You're clearly not well." He was trying to play the dementia card right then and there. "I'm perfectly well, Sandro," I said loud enough for the back row to hear. "But I know about the plan. I know about the competency hearing you were planning for me. I know about the divorce you planned for 6 months from now. And I know you think this land is your retirement fund." Sandro laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "Cynthia, your father is having an episode. We need to get him some water." Cynthia stepped out from behind me. She looked small, but her voice was steel. "I heard you, Sandro. Last night, with Blake. I heard you call me clueless. I heard you call my father soft." Sandro's face went white. He looked at Blake, who was already inching toward the parking lot. "Sheriff," I called out. Mitchell stepped out from behind the oversized floral arrangement, fully uniformed. "Sandro Vance, I have a warrant for your arrest regarding conspiracy to commit fraud. We also have some questions about a wire transfer from your previous fiancée in Ohio." The facade crumbled. Sandro didn't run, he just slumped. The arrogance evaporated, leaving just a small, greedy man. The aftermath was messy, as these things always are. But as the police cars drove away and the confused guests dispersed, Cynthia and I sat on the porch steps, watching the sun set over the property we had saved. "I'm sorry, Dad," she cried. "I should have known." "You loved him," I said gently. "Love makes us blind. That's why you have a father, to be the eyes in the back of your head." I told her then about the money, the real money, the patents, the savings. I told her she was never going to be destitute, with or without the land. She cried harder, realizing how much I had quietly built for her, and how close she had come to letting a wolf devour it. We learned a hard lesson that day. We learned that the devil doesn't come with horns. He comes with a business plan. If you've stuck with me this far, and if you believe that justice is worth fighting for, hit that subscribe button. It's a small gesture, but it tells me you're standing with us. The vineyard is still here. The roots are deep. And now, the fences are higher.